It is my honor to introduce Dr. Tawnya Pettiford-Wates. Tawnya Pettiford-Wates is a playwright, director, actor, poet, writer, and educator whose international career spans all aspects of the art of theater. As a professor of theater at VCUarts, she regularly teaches classes in solo performance, directing, and Black theater. And her students fondly know her as Dr. T, as do I. She's performed in many award-winning productions across her professional career and was an original cast member of the Tony Award-winning company of the New York Shakespeare Festival production of For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. She also worked in television and voice acting roles for Twin Peaks and all the way across the Halo and many other productions for TV. Her impressive Richmond directing career includes A Raisin in the Sun, the Virginia Rep Theater, Fences, Virginia Rep Theater, an Octoroon Theater Lab, Between Riverside and Crazy, Cadence Theater, Passing Strange, the Firehouse Theater, and A Streetcar Named Desire, Firehouse Theater, in addition to many of the VCU main stage productions as well. She was nominated recently for double awards from the Richmond Theater Critics Circle Awards, known as the Artsies, the 2020 award cycle. She was nominated for Fences as Best Director for a drama, and for Passing Strange as Best Director for a musical. And both plays were nominated for their respective categories as Best Play. On September 13th, at the ceremony of the Artsies, I am proud to announce that Dr. T won for Best Play for Fences. She has collaborated with 10 other scholars and arts educators in the best-selling book, Black Acting Methods, Critical Approaches, published in 2017. Her chapter is titled Ritual Poetic Drama Within the African Continuum, The Journey from Shakespeare to Shange. Dr. Tawnya Pettiford-Wates is an exemplary artist and educator, and her work is steeped in examining and exploring and the discovery of self-liberation, self-actualization, and authenticity in her students, and she brings that same type of examination exploration to the stage to also pull in and engage the audience. It is my pleasure to work with Dr. T. We've worked on several collaborations. She comes into my classes and teach. I go into her classes and teach, and we've also worked on several productions together. I've learned so much from her, and I can hope to continue to learn from Dr. Tawnya Pettiford-Wates. Thank you.
Lo, she is one of this confederacy. Now I perceive they have conjoined all three to fashion this false sport in spite of me. Injurious Hermia, most ungrateful maid, have you conspired? Have you with these contrived to bait me with this foul derision? Have all the counsel we two have shared, the sisters' vows, the hours when we have chid the hasty-footed time for parting us, is all forgot? somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Not my poems or a dance I gave up in the street, but somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Like a kleptomaniac working hard, forgetting while stealing. This is mine. This ain't your stuff. Now, why don't you put me back and let me hang out in my own self? That is my journey from Shakespeare to Shange. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm going to share with you some methodology that came out of my search for authenticity, self-affirmation as an artist, what I learned on that journey once I became an arts educator myself. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge and welcome the ancestors into the space, because I would not be standing here where I am today had it not been for the ones who came before me, whose shoulders I stand on, and who trod the ground and made the path that I now walk upon, and gave me the vision to step into who I am today. So I just want to acknowledge the ancestors by pouring libation, ashe, to Mary Bethune-McLeod, to Harriet Tubman, to Fannie Lou Hamer, to Sojourner Truth, ashe, ashe, to Angela Davis, to the women who inspired me, to my grandmother, Georgia Marable Pettiford, who taught me to cover the ground I stand upon. Ashe. Thank you. So, throughout my studies as an artist and an arts educator, I have come to recognize the essential and formative role that race and culture play in how successful or effective we are as artists and as arts educators. Years ago, as I prepared for what was the most consequential and important audition of my life, I discovered something that would transform the rest of my life and inform the journey forward. I had my first Broadway audition for a play called For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, a play by Ntozake Shange. And Ntozake, I didn't pour one for you, girl. Thank you, ashe. So anyway, I came to the audition in a very roundabout way. In other words, I just graduated from Carnegie Mellon with my BFA in performance. And as a treat to myself, a graduation present, my boyfriend and I went to New York to see For Colored Girls, which was the talk of the town. It was the buzz all over town. And one of the women, the lady in purple, actually graduated from Carnegie. So, you know, it's great to know somebody on Broadway and then to go see their show. So we went to the show. We went to the cheapest show, which is a Wednesday blue-haired ladies matinee special. And I had never had such an experience in my life. I was transported. I literally saw myself on stage. And that had never happened to me in a theater before. I had just been through 4 years of conservatory training. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And I'm sitting there in the theater, and all of a sudden, there's a tap on my shoulder, and it's one of the ushers who is saying, it's time for you to go. And I look around, and there is no one in the theater but me and my boyfriend. So I was in this altered state of Consciousness. And I didn't even realize that people had left. And I don't know how long we were sitting there. She was quite kind to let us sit as long as she did. In any case, I turned to him. He knew not to talk to me during this whole period, of course. I turned to him and I said, I'm supposed to be in that show. And so he said, why don't you give him a call? You know, I laughed out loud. I was like, right, call them and tell them I'm supposed to be in the show. That is not how it's done in the profession. But it was kind of like a dare. So we gathered up our things. We went outside to the phone booth. It was 1977, so there were no cell phones. And I put my coins in the telephone, and I dialed the number that was on the program for the New York Shakespeare Festival, which were the producers of For Colored Girls. And the voice on the other end of the line said, New York Shakespeare Festival, Joe Papp speaking. Joe Papp was the founder of the New York Shakespeare Festival and the Public Theater. He was an icon, and he was on the phone talking to me. So I got myself together very quickly, and I said, I'm an actor, and I'm in town for a moment, and I'd like an audition for Colored Girls. And he said, can you hold on? And he put me on hold. And at that moment, I thought, oh, he must be like laughing at me, because, I mean, who calls and says, this is done through agents in New York. So in any case, the next voice I heard was, casting, Rosemary Tischler, I hear you want an audition for Colored Girls. And I said, yes. She asked me several questions. Have you auditioned before? I said, no. She said, do you dance? I said, yes. She said, can you come now? And I said, yes, and I hung up the phone. And then I realized, come where? I didn't know where I was going. So I quickly called back. She was laughing. She was very gracious. She gave me the address where I was to go. I went. I danced for the choreographer, and they gave me some sides for the play to read for the director. This was on a Wednesday. On Monday. So I had to stay in New York over the weekend. I looked at the text, and I freaked out because it had no punctuation, it had no stage directions, it had nothing but words on a page with slash marks. And I had never seen text like that. And it was one of the poems I had witnessed, but remember, I was in this altered state of consciousness, and I didn't want to imitate the woman who had done the poem before. So I was freaking out, hyperventilating, et cetera, and I went, I got a hold of an acting teacher who was living from Carnegie, who was living in the city, and I went over to her house, and I'm panicking. I'm going, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And she said, treat it like Shakespeare. I said, oh, treat it like Shakespeare. And then I totally calmed down. And I said, oh, now I have a way in. I have a way to approach this stuff, which this was Ntozake Shange. And this was poetic drama, and she was telling me to approach it with Shakespeare, and that was like Shakespeare, and that was perfectly fine with me. So I realized something in that moment. In that moment, I realized that I had just graduated from one of the most prestigious conservatory programs in the country, and I was not prepared. I was not prepared for this audition with Ntozake Shange's words. I was disconnected from those words. I had to confront the fact that even though I had all of this incredible training and technique, that I was missing something. I was missing something because her text was like a foreign language to me. And even though I had been methodically trained, precisely, technically prepared for the professional arts industry, somewhere along the road, I lost myself. I lost me, myself. And my problem had nothing to do with my ability. It had nothing to do with my training as far as a technician, as an actor. It had nothing to do with that. My problem was far more disturbing than that. A lack of connection with my own cultural continuum and a basic knowledge of my authentic self beyond a forced a forced character portrayal, or behind the mask performance. I came to call that state that I was in alienated acting. Alienated acting. I was an alien to myself, and my panic exposed a fragility about my own cultural construction of myself, and a deficiency and awareness that made me question who I was. So that question is one that has to be addressed, I think, by everybody, actually. I think everybody needs to look at that question. But if you are an artist of the dramatic form, if you are a performing artist, you especially need to address that question. And if you are an artist of color, it becomes even more important in the culture and the society in which we live. It cannot be ignored. Not by the artist who is a student, not by the artist who is a professional, and certainly not by the teachers and professors who teach those artists and who are responsible ultimately to evaluate them. So I think that in that moment, I recognized that I was missing an essential component that would help me understand, recognize, and clothe myself in Ntozake Shange's poetry. Because the poetry spoke so directly to my soul and to my inner being. And for me as an actor then, to feel disconnected from it meant there was something wrong with my technique. Something wrong with the technical aspect of my training that left an essential ingredient out. So I'm going to take a pause for a moment and talk about a book that I am an author in called Black Acting Methods, Critical Approaches. And this is a collection of essays by a diversity of artists that speak directly to BIPOC students, particularly Black students. And my essay in there is the use of ritual poetic drama, within the African continuum, my journey from Shakespeare to Shange. So I had to re-examine, years later, after I did Broadway, after I did the national tour, after I did some international, we also took the show outside of the country, so we did some international touring as well. And I came off of the road and I began teaching. I fell into teaching. I won't go into how that happened, but I fell into teaching. And because I didn't set out to be a teacher, my pedagogy was the same pedagogy I had been taught. So I started to teach my own students the methods and ways that I had been taught. And I call it the Canon of Supremacy, teaching whiteness and the tradition. And these are the practitioners. These are the people that we studied when I was in the conservatory. These are the people that we worshiped, basically, whose methodologies we had to learn, whose methodologies we based our practice on. As they are scrolling by, you might find something that is familiar about them all, something that they all have in common. So far, they've all been men. Oh, there's a woman. One woman, there's a woman, and there's another man. But something else, they were all white. They were all white, except for one, Suzuki, who taught a technique called the Suzuki method, and also Augusto Boal, who is from Brazil, but he's white presenting. So anyway, something started to click about this whole training methodology, the people that I had been studying, and those are the people that I taught. It was well-grounded, but it was grounded in a Western European model. And this particular canon of practitioners takes us back and made me recognize as a teaching artist that if you do things in the same way, you will get the same results. And I did not want my students to suffer from the disconnection from themselves that I did. I did not want them to only be able to work behind the mask. I did not want them to be alienated in their pursuit of being excellent in performance, of finding and toning and honing their craft. So it made me sankofa. Sankofa is a West African term that means go back and get it. I had a revelation that I was missing something, and that the roots of who I am are grounded, the roots of all civilization, actually. When you look at all civilization began on the continent of Africa. Therefore, the beginnings, the seeds, the origins of the dramatic form also began on that continent. And so I went back. The question I wanted to know is, where did drama come from? Where did the dramatic form come from? What was its purpose? And how did it go from there, from its origins, to where we are today, basically? You know, how did I get so disconnected? Why was I feeling so alienated on stage with the practice? So foreign, so clearly acting out of performance, right? And sankofa is a West African term, and basically, loosely, it means if a man goes on a journey and he gets down the road and he discovers that he has forgotten something. Sankofa, go back and get it. There is no shame in forgetting. But if that same man goes on a journey, gets down the road, realizes that he's forgotten something, but his pride won't let him go back, and he continues on the journey only to find out at the end of the road the very thing he needed the most is the thing he forgot, for that man, it is a shame. So for me, sankofa means to go back and get what was lost, what was taken, what was stolen, what was forgotten. And there's no shame in that exploration. Gathering the pieces of me that were scattered and bringing them together helped create for me a practice that grounds me in who I am. A practice that I have now shared with hundreds, probably thousands of students of all cultural backgrounds. And since we are asking the question, who are you? Then that question is for everyone to answer. So what I started to discover was that I had been taught this model of the Wellmade play. The Wellmade play, people who study playwriting or English know this model very well. It's a linear model, and it starts with exposition. It creates plot, and then there's a conflict, and then there's a climax, and then there's a resolution, and then there's a denouement or conclusion. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you know, the goal is that we start together and we end together, right? We go on this road together, and the story reveals itself through the exposition. The exposition brings us all together to the same starting off place, and then the story gets told. Because the play is the thing. And in essence, the drama is about story. So I wanted to look at the African origins of story, because in the African continuum, story is fundamental. It's fundamental to everything. It's fundamental to everything. So let me move this forward. This is the Wellmade play, which already, the Wellmade play, that already is kind of supremacist. Right? I mean, already it's saying, so if this is the well-made play, that means that everything outside of this construct isn't well made. Like, at least that is the inference, right? So we're taking all of this in. We're taking that whole white canon of males telling us how to act. We're taking in the well-made play, and anything beyond that, the outside of that construct somehow doesn't measure up, which means I didn't measure up. Something about me didn't measure up, not unless I was standing in that model, not unless I was professing what those white men were telling me to profess, not unless I was using that methodology. Then then I had a technique. Then I had a good model to follow, right? That's what we all aspired to. But in the African origins of theater, it's about the story model. And the work that I do is based on story. And this technique, ritual poetic drama within the African continuum, finds its roots in the story model. The story model, the cycle of life, death, and transformation. And I use a quote from James Baldwin that says, "A story is impelled by the necessity to reveal itself." And when I think of impelled, I like to describe it as, pardon this analogy, but I like to describe it as like projectile vomit. Like, you can't hold it back. Right? You could try, but it's going to come through. If you try to cover up your mouth, it's going to come through. It's going to come out your nose. It's going to clog up your ears. Your eyes are going to water. It's got to get out, right? So a story is impelled by the necessity to reveal itself. Therefore, a story can have nothing to hide. So you know all that mask stuff I was talking about, hiding behind the mask? A story can have nothing to hide, at least not intentionally. That there is no resolution to the story. Okay, so the well-made play model, the resolution is the thing. We arrive at the resolution and then we have the conclusion. A story, there's no resolution. That the aim of the story is revelation in what we make of the questions with which the story leaves us. Phew. That was transformational stuff for me. That blew my mind. That's Ntozake Shange's For Colored Girls. It was not the well-made play. I mean, the author herself called it a choreo poem, right? A choreo poem. It was poetic drama. It did not pretend to resolve questions. It posed questions, and it gave us those aha moments, those recognition moments, those affirmation moments, and that was the role. That was the role. So all of a sudden, I recognized that this Euro-centered Western model of drama was not the thing that spoke to me. It was not the thing that spoke to me. I neglected to tell you that on my journey, I was in the show For Colored Girls in about 3 or 4 different companies over a period of about 4 years. So I had quite an education as I was playing different roles in the play. Ultimately, over a 20-year span, I ended up playing every single character in the play. So, and that, because some of the women in the play, in case you don't know it, all the ladies are called a color. lady in purple, lady in blue, lady in yellow. And the colors sort of correspond to where they are in the cycle of life, actually. And it's the rainbow of colors. And, you know, they are at different places and stations in their life during this journey. And I had an opportunity as I grew, you know, to play all of those various stations. A great honor. It's a rite of passage. It was a rite of passage. So the thing that the specific methodology of ritual poetic drama is grounded in story. And the process begins by creating a community of people that value and support one another and embrace the basic principle of Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. So it sort of puts to the side that competitive nature that is in the performing arts, where, you know, when we audition, we're competing, and, you know, it's like, I'm better than her, I'm better than him, you know, I do this better. It takes all of that away, and it invites everyone to the circle, and everyone is valued in whatever station or stage they are. In this cycle of life-death transformation, it mimics nature, right? The cycles of nature, life, death, and transformation, that we are sure that after the summer comes the fall, and after the fall comes the winter, and after the winter comes the spring. That things have to die in order to be reborn. And that rebirth is about transformation. So it's about that cycle. So I recognize that I didn't need to be the teacher. I didn't need to be the lecturer. I didn't need to be the answer woman. I needed to be the facilitator. I needed to facilitate the journey of my students through this process of life-death transformation, so that they could have a revelation and a recognition of who they were and what they had to offer to the dramatic form. Let's see. So, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the particular ingredients in ritual poetic drama itself. It functions on word power, sound power, dance power, or movement power, and the power of invocation. We're looking for harmony and balance. The word ritual, so the three terms ritual, poetic, drama. Ritual is an altered state of consciousness. An altered state of consciousness where we are engaged in the process of self-discovery, self-knowledge, remembering. Like, remember I said I was scattered, so I had to remember myself, right? Gathering myself together and finding the unique power and potency that we hold individually and uniquely as creative artists. The poetic is the music and the symbolic. It's the language of the metaphoric and ironic and allegorical, and the poetry of the language is the emotional expression. And then the drama, ritual, poetic, drama, is the story. It's the story. It's the story where we have the revelation and transformation. I should say, James Baldwin's quote goes on to say, after he talks about story, the point, the aim of the story is revelation in what we make of the questions with which the story leaves us. He also says plot, on the other hand, answers all questions it pretends to pose. Pretend questions. Pretend questions are questions we already know the answers to, right? So as a teacher, I'm attempting to get you to the answer, right? The answer that, no. So this process recognizes that there are answers, plural, that this is not a finite process. This is not a science. This is an art, right? This is not a science, it's an art. It's a creative art. And we want as many questions as we can pose. We want to create more and more and more. So this is what we are looking for through the process of ritual poetic drama. We begin with rites of passage moments. That rite of passage moment when I was handed that piece of paper with that poem on it from For Colored Girls, and I freaked out. That was a rite of passage moment. And I recognized something that brought me to a revelation. And that revelation caused me to question who I was, and that questioning brought me to the process of creating this methodology where I could be a facilitator of other people's revelations. The idea is that ourselves, when we as actors, when we start to ask ourselves those questions, we recognize that there are issues, stories in us. There are stories that we hold in ourselves that can be, if released, liberating. They can be powerful and potent. They can be revelatory. And there are also stories we hold in ourselves that can block us, that can bind us, and keep us bound so that we never truly fly in the full potency and power of our creativity. So that's what this work ultimately is about. It's about the liberation of the creative artist. I want my students to be empowered. I want them to be able to cover the ground they stand on. I want them to be self-actualized. I want them to recognize that the contributions they have to make as creative artists are unique to them and no one else can make them. I want them to become creators instead of imitators. I want them to live in the power of their creativity because theater is that. Theater is a powerful tool. Ultimately, like I said, this practice has empowered many artists right here at VCU we have some testimonials to share in a moment when I'm finished speaking, where they talk about that. They talk about what the process of ritual poetic drama gave to them as creative artists. And ultimately, that's what the work is for. The work is to help artists to become whole rather than fragments of themselves, to be empowered as artists to make choices that are powerful, to make choices that are authentic, that belong to them, that are uniquely their choices, and to be able to affirm themselves, right? Not waiting to be affirmed. And it's emerged as a practice and a process and a powerful method in which to nurture, to empower, and to transform both the artists themselves and the audiences that witness the art that they create. It's transformational for those who witness. And I said witness, not spectate, right? Not hide behind a fourth wall, but engage. Engage in a communion with the artists on stage. The work is rooted in the knowledge that with every sunrise, there comes a sunset. And that the power of theater, the power of performance art, is about life, death, and transformation. And I love engaging in the process because I learn something with every single community that we create. I am impacted. The art and the creation, the original work that comes out of it is just profound. And so I want to thank you for listening today, and we'll, have some questions, but I want you to watch these video testimonials of some students who have been out of school now from like 5 to 10 years, and they're still practicing in this form. I'll let them bear witness for themselves. Namaste.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Eileen Coles, and I would love to share with you how ritual poetic drama has impacted my life. On a personal level, ritual poetic drama has changed the way that I interact with my family, with my friends, and some of the community I'm building. So with ritual, there's such an emphasis placed on being a truth teller. And so being somebody who's honest in relationships, who confronts things, who puts things on the front porch, which that's a term that's used often in TCP, where basically we're unpacking things in front of each other. So there's no need for the he said, she said, the whispering. The community can say it all outwardly. And it offers an opportunity of some pretty serious conversations and also some much needed conversations, which also means much needed healing. No matter what the story is or how hard the truth is to tell, being honest about that in the relationships that I have has truly changed the relationships. It offers there to be a deeper connection. My work life is completely based in ritual poetic drama. If it wasn't for ritual poetic drama, I don't know if I would have been able to sustain myself here in New York City. I'm going on 10 years, come December 2020, that I've been here in New York City, and I've been able to sustain myself based off of the work that I've done in ritual poetic drama.
As a teaching artist, to be able to offer a methodology outside of the Eurocentric model is revolutionary. Not only is it revolutionary, especially right now in this country, but it's revolutionary for every BIPOC artist to have a process that feels like it's their own.
And that is because, one, my understanding of myself as an artist was completely founded on ritual poetic drama within the African continuum. Without it, I honestly would not have a self-actualized practice. So because of my understanding of who I am as an artist and what I offer and what I bring to the table, I feel like I'm able to show up differently. I'm able to create my own work. I'm able to articulate my work. I'm able to share my work. I'm able to negotiate my work. So one of my favorite stories to tell when I'm talking about ritual poetic drama is one time I was doing a dance call here in New York. I'm in the dance call after I'm finished. I'm like, okay, I felt good about that, and I'm using the approach from ritual even in the movement, and some girl walks up to me and she goes, you must be from VCU. And I was like, yeah, why you say that? She said, because earlier today there were these VCU girls who came in there and you all have the same vibe to you. You all have the same thing where you're just doing something different.
Then she said, it's like you're reminding us why we're here.
And I knew exactly who they were talking about. And it was specific to ritual because what we were doing was approaching the movement like we're telling a story.
A different approach to a story that honors life, death, and transformation.
Another benefit that ritual has had on me is just the idea that as an artist, I have to be well. And honestly, it led me toward a totally different path of wellness. The time I took ritual, I had like the swine flu. I used to eat bacon and Skittles, like dollar store bacon, the whole thing. That was how I was functioning. And I expected my work to be well. But when I started doing ritual, it became very obvious that it was not well. And that awareness kind of made it very evident that I was only going to get. But so far, my goals were way beyond that point. So I had to check myself and really look at what it meant to be well. And that led me on a whole nother journey to where I'm vegan now. I sleep very well. I went and got my certification as a holistic health and healing practitioner and nutritionist, and I like tagged that along with all of the work around ritual, and it fits smooth together. Approaching the work that way is probably the most important part of my practice now. There's something in ritual, one of the ways that kind of combat fear, I think, one of the powerful ways, at least for me, that helped me combat some of my fear of like wanting to be right, is this idea that you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present. I've witnessed folks come together in a circle, in a community, where we were about to learn and totally engage in the process of ritual poetic drama in the African continuum. And I've seen envy in that circle. I've seen tension, years of tension. I've seen people come and kind of like stand out of the circle and their bodies are closed off. And then I've watched them open up. I've watched people heal. I've watched people mend wounds that have been festering for years. I've watched people share things they've never said. I've watched people release themselves. I've watched people change. It's been beautiful.
I entered my solo performance career through ritual poetic drama, and I am forever grateful because it has allowed me to tell stories the way I believe stories were always intended to be told, fully embodied and fully witnessed.
My experience with ritual poetic drama is probably like most people's experience with ritual poetic drama, that I was completely unprepared for it and had no idea what I was getting myself into. At that point, I believe I thought that I had kind of seen it all when it came to different theater practices, and ritual poetic drama definitely took me for a loop, and I had never experienced anything like that before. But what I did experience and what came out of it was something so incredible, and something that I am absolutely grateful for, because it completely transformed me not only as an artist, but it completely transformed me as a person in the world. And by that I mean ritual poetic drama really took the time and created the container and space for us to really get to know and understand who we are as people, and not just bodies in space moving around talking on stage. I think for me, the experience was definitely something that permeated pretty much everything in my entire life. And some of the quotes and phrases and learning moments that I experienced in that class are still things that I think of today, that I use today, and wisdom that I help to impart with other people because it was so impactful. And as an artist, so much kind of technical work was happening, and I'm really learning how to breathe and you know, how to project and et cetera, et cetera. That class really just stripped everything down, and we really got to who we are as people. So kind of shedding all the artificialness and really coming to like the truth of who you are. And for me, that was incredibly powerful and incredibly empowering. Another gratifying moment with this work, there have been many, but I would say one of the most is that I was able to use little pieces of ritual poetic drama in teaching local kids in the community who performed their own theater piece, and being able to watch those kids just soak in ritual poetic drama work and really just take it and run, and really just take it to a place that I had never even seen before, because I'd only been really working with actors doing ritual poetic drama work. So to see kids take the work and just really bring it to a whole other level. Some of these kids had never performed before in their entire life and were scared to perform. And so to watch them completely blossom under the ritual work, to me was just so incredibly life-changing and is something that I will absolutely never forget. A lot of these children were just able to speak their truth and to feel empowered on stage and know that it was those words and their words that they wrote, that they created. And I think that is definitely something that will stick with them forever. But it also, for me to witness that, has also really stuck with me and just really showed me the power of ritual poetic drama and what it actually can do.
Ritual poetic drama is the very reason why I am still a performer today. When I was in college and before I had met Dr. T, I was told by professors that I was not good enough. I was told, in short, that the very essence of who I am was not an essence that was valued on the stage. They were asking me to change who I was to fit who they wanted me to become through the rules and the practices of archaic, dead white men who used to teach theater. I always questioned, how do these dead white men have any say over this empowered gay black performer and how I should or should not perform on the stage? Ritual poetic drama taught me that I alone enter the space with everything needed to be successful as an actor. And instead of looking at me from an exclusive way, saying, don't do this, don't act like that, don't sound like that, ritual poetic drama teaches me to come from an inclusive perspective, asking me to bring all of who I am to the stage, because all of who I am is not only what makes me powerful, but all of who I am also allows me to connect and relate to the very characters that I play. Today, I'm a successful actor out here in Los Angeles, as well as a successful acting teacher. The one thing that keeps me grounded and the one thing that keeps my students growing is ritual poetic drama. I teach from the same philosophy that Dr. T shared with me, that I alone am enough, and that all of my students alone are enough, and that they are all individually powerful, and that they must work to unleash their voice and song power, their movement and dance power, and their word and performance power that is rooted from in here, as well as rooted culturally in the ancestors from where we all have come.